Hey, thank you for joining us today. Again, my name is Andrea Gonzalez with Trellis Strategies, and you are here with us on this 360 discussion conversation. Our series this fall is called Barriers to Completion: Why Individuals Pause Their Education. This talk today is going to be about trust, expectations, and outcomes of post-secondary education. So I'm going to turn it over to our CEO and president of Trellis, Dr. Debra Chromy. Oh, thanks. I wanted to say, as we go through this discussion, we're going to have a discussion with our panelists, and then at the end, we will have lots of time for Q&A. And if you have questions along the way, please put those in the chat, or you can message me directly, and we will get to those questions at the end of our organized program here. Okay, thank you, Debra. I apologize for the interruption.
No worries. Thank you, Andrea, for pulling this all together. I appreciate all your hard work. And thank you to all of you who are joining us from across the country, including Alaska. Hi, Santa. Glad you could join us. As Andrea mentioned, my name is Debra Chromy, and I am president and CEO of Trellis Company based in Round Rock, Texas. I'm pleased to see so many of you have joined us for today's discussion. As Andrea mentioned, Trellis 360 was actually started back in early 2023. So we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary, Andrea, which is really exciting. And our goal with that was to bring together industry leaders for thought-provoking discussions on today's higher education and workforce landscape. Our first series that happened in the spring of this year was focused on the value of a post-secondary education and was so well received that we started our second series, this one on the barriers to completion. So this is the second in that series. And our goal with these sessions is that participants gain invaluable insights, share in the discussion, and network with like-minded professionals. So with that, I'm excited for this second session to begin. And this one, as Andrea mentioned, is on trust, expectations, and outcomes. Today's panelists are Dr. Annette Tielle, Del Valley ISD superintendent. And while we have a huge bio of her out there, I decided to share one little snippet about Dr. Tielle, and that is that she believes every student will graduate from the Del Valley ISD. And for those who are not familiar, that's Independent School District. And that they will graduate and be able to attend a 2-year or 4-year college or graduate from high school possessing the skill set needed to go right into the workforce. So looking forward to hearing Dr. Tielle's comments. Also with us is Mark Sherry, Vice Chair of Workforce Solutions in the Capital Area and Vice President of Human Resources at Baylor Scott and White Hospital. And what I pulled from Mark's background, which you should all take a look at as well, is that he's really focused on upskilling, apprenticeships, and moving individuals into quality jobs that reflect their talents and passions. So I think we have two people. I'm really excited to have both Mark and Annette here to jump into a discussion about what all that means. And I'm going to start, I know I'm going to apologize ahead of time, Mark and Annette, I tend to jump off script. So just so you know, I'm sure you can go right with us here. I'm going to start and really, I think, jump with you, Annette, first around high school graduates. And in particular, many of them are questioning the value of higher education and are contemplating joining the workforce right out of high school. But there are concerns that maybe they haven't developed the skills necessary to be actually put into a career path or a journey that will lead them to continuing to increase their responsibilities, their income, to really improve the quality of their life. So can you talk to me a little bit about what it is that you're seeing specifically at Del Valley, as well as more broadly across Texas to address those issues? That's a big question.
So in terms of Del Valley ISD, our goal, and my personal goal, is to give our students that multitude of opportunities. And we have an early college high school as well as a P-Tech high school. So what those schools are, the early college high school allows for our students to receive an associate's degree while they are concurrently achieving their diploma, their high school diploma. A PTAC is a pathway technology, early college, high school. That means that the students are also attending a 2-year college, getting an associate's degree while concurrently receiving their high school diploma, but they also are enrolled in an internship with a business anchor partner. And our business anchor partners are Infineon and Tesla. So what is actually a very successful model is when our students are both going to Austin Community College and working towards their associate's degree while the business partner is training them during that same time frame of the school year, and then having successful internships in the summer during their junior and senior summer years. Then they really are, and I am finding that they are very prepared. What I do hear from business partners is that they're very happy with the workforce that we're producing from Del Valley. We are 91% economically disadvantaged in my district. So our students don't take opportunities for granted, and they do come with a work ethic. All that to say, they are getting some type of advanced degree while they're in high school. It's not that they're just leaving high school with only a high school diploma. They do also have that associate's degree and, quite honestly, certifications from the business partners.
So Annette, can you talk to what percentage of students graduate with this additional, whether it's a certification or 2-year degree?
We just have our new numbers for this last graduating class of 2023, and that is 85%.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Congratulations. That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Yeah. And Mark, I don't know if you want to jump in here. I know Annette talked about the programs that are working through. Can you talk a little bit? Certainly hospitals today
Sure.
are really challenged, right, with finding healthcare workers, especially in this post-pandemic world. Can you talk about what partnerships you, specifically at Baylor Scott, but in your role as vice chair of workforce, more broadly, to try and build that sort of pathway for individuals into the healthcare world?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, for us, the partnerships are extremely important. We understand in healthcare and across the healthcare spectrum the shortage of talent we have right now in this marketplace. And through that, then we have to begin looking at how do we build additional partnerships and grow that talent, sometimes internally and other times externally in doing that. So our three-legged stool that I like to call it is a partnership with an academic provider, whether that be a high school or a community college, and then our local workforce board. And that helps us tap into another avenue of talent that particularly we haven't been looking at before in the healthcare marketplace. So through that partnership is the ability to rapidly excel somebody into a career path and have them, particularly through our apprenticeship model that we have, having somebody come into that space on an earn and learn pathway where we can get them introduced to the healthcare environment and let them get a little more comfortable in terms of what area they want to proceed into. We, as an organization, and also as parents and community members, know there's a great deal of interest in nursing and physicians within our markets and also nationally, but not a lot of people know the other 200 jobs or 2,000 jobs that we have out there in healthcare, and that's what we're trying to do with these partnerships in these short earn and learn or micro internships. Is to try to make sure that we get those students, whether they're in the high school or they're adults that are looking for second careers to reinvent themselves, to give them the ability to come back into our workplace and experience what it's like to be in healthcare. It doesn't necessarily have to be a nurse, which could take a lengthy time to complete, but it exposes them to other fields within the healthcare industry, which we're very pleased to expose them to.
And Mark, could you talk a little bit about, you mentioned sort of micro internships or apprenticeships. Yeah. Can you talk about, what do those look like? How are they structured? Are those paid positions? And how does that fit in with, whether it's high school or college, how does that fit in with individual schedules?
Yeah, I think that's the important piece. And you touched upon a couple of things here. One, it's an earn and learn model. So it helps that individual make sure that they do have some income coming in to support their families to make that career transition. So that's an important piece of that apprenticeship model. Secondly, we've had the ability to work with our educational systems to accelerate that learning process, which was traditionally an 18-month program. We try to condense into 9 weeks or 12 weeks. And I think that helps the learner also. It eliminates some of those barriers that we're seeing across many facets of industry, whether it's manufacturing or healthcare. It's how quickly can we now adjust and get them into the workplace and have them start earning and learning during that process. And that's the important piece of apprenticeships for us, is the ability to do that. I don't know about you, but there are not a lot of people that can leave one job and go to another and not be paid or have their benefits in today's economy. So again, this creates a way for us to leverage that and through help through our Texas Workforce Commission and partners, we're able to leverage some financial grants or dollars that will help individuals excel in this process.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm going to throw you a curveball, Mark, off the top of your head, through the last period of a program, how many of those ended up, continuing working with Baylor Scott White? And related to that, do you continue to support their educational journey?
Yeah. No, this is a great question. And what we're seeing right now, since about 2019, we've had over 120 apprentices come into our industry and graduate. We have a retention rate of about 90% with these individuals. And then the next thing we want to do is absolutely continue that career path of upscaling. We want to provide them the opportunity to come in at an entry level, to earn and learn, to gain competencies. And then as they want to expand into that field, we will help assist them through tuition assistance or loan forgiveness to move into those areas and take another step in their career to ultimately pursue to become that registered nurse or that physician that they choose to be.
That's great. That's fabulous. I'm going to switch back to Annette, and I'm assuming, Annette, you have a relationship with Baylor Scott and White and are sending students that way, or if not, will be after this webinar.
Well, I'll take all of our students. Absolutely.
That's it. We've already talked about how lovely that would be to just hire all of my students.
Yeah.
That would be great. But perhaps, Annette, you could talk a little bit about how, a school district like yours goes about doing outreach to Tesla, Baylor Scott and White, or others. I mean, do they come to you? Do you go to them? How did you go about developing these programs?
It's a little bit of both. I will say that I aggressively looked to make partnerships, create partnerships with a lot of business industries when I first became superintendent. And Del Valley Independent School District is east of Austin, although we are the airport. The airport is in our district. We tend to seem far away from business partners. So we had not gotten many of those partnerships. When Tesla came to the Del Valley region and started talking with our school board about a Chapter 313 tax abatement, what happened from there was really having these conversations about, so what does that mean for our students? What does that mean for opportunities, internships? Would you consider being an anchor partner? Would you consider helping us develop a P-TECH where the kids would have that internship? And they were great partners. They very readily said yes. They very readily decided to support our students. They're actually outfitting our new P-TECH with robotics and mechatronics and manufacturing and engineering equipment. From there, we got noticed. And then other industries started contacting me. So right now we have at least 3 manufacturing and engineering companies. Our kids are graduating with internships with the city of Austin and the airport as auto technicians. We have our students graduating and becoming phlebotomists at various hospitals across the area. We have students who are graduating as paralegals with their paralegal certification. We have our students graduating with certification as welders in construction and planning. So we have EMT. So we have a lot of business and industries that have reached out to us once we became noticed through Tesla. And that has been something that just really changed the landscape of our partnerships.
And Annette, can you talk about what does that look like for someone who is in high school, junior or senior, who's doing an internship or an apprenticeship? Only because in the past, employers have not been excited about it because it meant I got somebody for 2 hours here, 2 hours there. And obviously, you don't want them just answering the phone and filing papers. So talk a little bit about how do you make sure that the internship is valuable for not only the student, but the employer themselves, and that they're getting value out of that relationship?
So I will tell you, several years ago when I was in another district, I did have a partnership with a business partner, a nationwide business partner. And they kept sharing that our students just needed to have soft skills. If our students had the soft skills, the work ethic, the perseverance, all the things that we look for as employers, that they would be fine going into the internship. They looked at their coding skills. They looked at just their grades, their GPA. And when our students went to work for them, they weren't prepared. And they were not happy with that cohort of students. So something that I learned from that is if we're going to enter into a partnership, either I ask the business partner to provide us with a crossways, like a cross path, so that we can develop that, curriculum. But more importantly, and what really works is when we have our students in a pathway and a business partner approaches us to be the internship partner for that pathway, meaning manufacturing, engineering, mechatronics, coding, computer science. When they meet with us, the question then is, okay, the first 2 years, it's like being in a university where you're getting your general classes. So during those first 2 years, during freshman and sophomore year, they're going to be getting their generic courses. Then during their junior and senior year, when they go out, and we will release them for 2 hours to go out to the business partner, having the business partner train them on the skills so that when they come back, we can take it from a textbook perspective, and then they could hire them in the summer, where the students then can apply what they had been learning all school year. And then by the time they graduate, they have had 2 full years of working with the business partner, and they truly are ready. And that's the model that works for us in our school district.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Can you talk, has that also improved your retention rate of high school students?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I would assume so.
It has improved our retention rate for sure, because our students now see a path. Many of our students don't have the means to be able to go to a university, not even because of being funding, but because they need to work to help support their families. So many of our students having that opportunity to go right into the workforce, but being highly skilled, is very attractive to them.
I agree.
So I'd like to ask you both a question that is just sort of bubbling up in my head, and it's related to, post-secondary education and, this discussion about the value of post-secondary education. Do you think that we are starting to see, one, because of an industry need, but also a response to concerns about, just as you mentioned, Annette, as well as the cost of it, sort of different paths into careers? And I begin to think about it as really no longer a linear journey. You don't graduate from high school, go to college.
Sure.
There will always be some people who do that. But for the majority of folks, are we going to start to move, or I think hearing the two of you, I would think we are already moving that way here in the Austin area, towards a model where we are getting folks ready in high school to actually move into the workforce and then continue to grow their education and their career opportunities as time goes on.
Yeah, I'll take the first stab of that and give Annette a chance to rest here a minute. But I think our job is how do we eliminate barriers for individuals, and I think there's a lot of conversations about how expensive it is to obtain an education now, and coming out with debt. We certainly see that in healthcare. in terms of our physicians coming out that have debt for many years, along with a lot of our clinical staff. What we're trying to do is eliminate those barriers, and by doing that is create a pathway of providing them the opportunity to come into an organization, gain some experience. With that experience, then they have the opportunity to look at the different pathways that they can go into. They may choose to go into nursing, or they may want to choose to go into other allied health areas such as radiology or laboratory science, areas that they may not have been exposed to or had conversations about, or see the interest in those particular areas. Then from that, once they become employed in our organization, we have an opportunity to see their work ethic. And before making that larger investment in them, it gives us a chance to look at that cost of turnover a little bit. It gives us the opportunity to pick those individuals that have the opportunity, give them the chance to then excel through what we're starting to offer. Again, straight up tuition assistance. We're paying the debt or upfront the cost of going back to school. And then giving them that opportunity to select from multiple locations. I think that's one thing that COVID has taught us, and we learned from it, is that ability now to learn virtually, and it's opened the door for us to tap into some flexibility in our schedules, to offer different training opportunities, different time frames. So again, all this in this theme and this model is, how do we eliminate barriers for individuals to fill positions that we're having a difficult time filling because of a lack of a supply or qualified talent within the Austin marketplace.
Thank you, Mark. Annette?
So what was it? Can you repeat the second part of the question again?
If I can, I was doing it off the top of my head. So just really thinking about, are we moving to a new way? Traditionally it had been high school, college, et cetera. And a lot of people just dropped out when you got to that college part, right? So are we moving to a new pathway, if you will, that gets them through programs that are at Del Valle into a skill set that allows them to get their first job and then continue sort of developing their education and their career path as they go along? Do you think that there's going to be a major switch? Not that some people won't always go straight through, but especially for populations like those in the Del Valle area.
Yeah. So I have heard something like the average person is going to have 8 different jobs in their lifetime. I don't know that that's the case, but that scares me to have 8 different careers. I can't imagine. I've done this for 32. But when I think that we're preparing kids for jobs that don't even exist, sure, I do believe that that is what we have to prepare kids for. We have to train them and prepare them to be flexible and to be adaptive, because while they're being trained for one job and one skill set, they're going to have to learn how to take that skill set and apply it in multiple different settings. So for example, if you take our computer science pathway, well, right now we're offering 2 different tracks. One is for a digital twin and the other is for cybersecurity. 2 very different tracks, but maybe a third will come from that, or a fourth. So what we need to look at as ISDs or school districts is, how can we take our pathways and give them enough of a foundation, but then expose them to as many different types of career opportunities so that they do recognize that their skills transfer and they are transferable. I also think that as kids continue to get into the workforce and look towards those advanced degrees, whether it's master's or doctorate, it might turn into certifications now. It might not be a full master's degree or a full doctorate. Our kids are coming out right now of high school, and some of them will be making $90,000 as auto techs. So I certainly didn't make that as a teacher.
No, and one of the things I think that we did a number of years ago, which was a big mistake, and we're trying to undo it now, is this message of everybody needs to go to college in the traditional sense of college. And we kind of dismissed those jobs that maybe came out of the shop class. I'm really dating myself now, but but construction, plumbing, like I always say, my plumber and electrician, they drive nicer cars than I do, and I bet their house is nicer than me. But I think we made a mistake of devaluing those positions in some ways when those are so needed in going forward, and they are good livings.
Yeah, I agree 100% in terms of devaluing. I think we see that across the industry in multiple jobs. I think that's a step that we have to take, particularly in the healthcare market, is making sure that we educate the community, educate the school systems about how critical these jobs are, and they are very good paying jobs and great career opportunities to accelerate. Back to the internship. I think it's not only the students, but we've taken the opportunity to do internships for the teachers, the guidance counselors, the high school teachers, so they understand what those opportunities are and how we can assist them in promoting what those jobs are. It's just not the nurse and the physician in healthcare, but there are these other jobs out there that are okay for students to get into, and they can make a very good living going back and obtaining these certifications or these 2-year degrees, and they can do it relatively quickly.
Mark, you bring up a really good point, and I want to ask Annette, what are you doing? Are you doing internships for your teachers? Because at some point, so I'll go back again to my own experience. I remember sitting in algebra class in high school and saying, when am I ever going to need this? And, the teacher didn't have a good response. I bet today's teachers have a great response for that, right? I'm hoping, Annette.
Well, what I will tell you is we do practice what we preach. We do walk our own walk. Every year we hire our own teachers to be teachers, our students in our education pathway for our child development centers. So we have 3 child development centers, and those 3 centers are for the teachers' children so that they have childcare. So our students, they intern there while they're taking their education classes, and now dual credit with the help of our community colleges. And the idea is that we move forward in the sense that if they're able to take their dual credit ACC classes or community college credit hours while they're doing practicums with us, then could they student teach upon graduation and go to their 4-year college for their 4-year degree? The other thing is some of them are coming right out of high school, and they're becoming the daycare teachers because they don't have to have a degree. We also hire our own technology techs in the summer. So we hire our own students. We hire 30 of them every year and in the summer to do what we need them to do with our computers. And then at the end of the summer, we have over the past 3 years hired at least 5 of them. So we're trying really hard in our district to model what it is that we're hoping our business partners will model.
That's great. And I want to go back to something that I shared about Mark in the beginning. And I think it was, Mark, you were really focused, or I read in your bio, on making sure that individuals end up in career paths that are tied to their passion and what they like to do, right? Because that's how we all end up happy, being forced down a path that we don't want to go because people think that's going to be a better path. That's when, things all fall apart. So I want to ask Annette, how do you go about making sure that individuals have an opportunity to explore, or you and your teaching staff have an opportunity to assess what somebody is good at and then guiding them into a pathway that they might want to explore?
So actually, the next 3 nights, beginning tonight, are Explore Del Valle Innovation. And we have opened it up to our families and communities from 6 to 9. They're coming in. I'm doing a presentation. My principal for the P-Tech Early College High School is doing a presentation. My director of career and technical education programs is doing a mini presentation. And then our principal at the high school. We're talking about programs that start in middle school, what the choices are. And we've invited elementary and middle school parents. We're then going to take them on a tour of our facility and the different programs. Because of that, that is what we actually have found. A lot of our students, when they are in their junior year, realize, I really would have wanted to be in the culinary arts program, or I would have liked to have done an internship at Lost Pines Catering, and they start to see what their peers are doing. So something that we've decided we're going to make a conscious effort is twice a year for 3 days each semester, have an Explore Del Valley to talk to parents about that. And then really working with our counselors and teachers to help students recognize what they're interested in, because right now 8th graders are having to decide what field they want to go into when they get into high school, and that is challenging. So I think exposing them to all the different opportunities, recognizing their skill set, and then letting them just look at what's there, have an opportunity to come and visit and recognize that they may change their minds, but at least they have a broad perspective of what opportunities are there.
And what they'd like to do. You know,
Mhm.
one of the terms that gets tossed around and has been for a while is advanced manufacturing. You know, all the jobs are going to be in advanced, but nobody knows what that means. Do you go
That's
through the
right.
process of sort of explaining, you know, these are the types of jobs, or these are the types of educational programs that align with advanced manufacturing or skill sets you'll develop?
So, that's just funny that you said that. I wish I was able to show some pictures. So when our students went to visit with Infineon, and that is a chip manufacturing company, and they really thought that they would be interested in that. And then they had to put on the clean suit, because the clean rooms, from what I understand, Mark, are even cleaner and more sterile than hospitals. So they had to suit up and zip up, and they looked like Martians. And the boys thought it was very cool. Some girls thought it was very cool. Some thought it was messing up their makeup, and others just had no interest. And then some just thought it was the best idea and really, really, really fell in love with that career path. So exposing them to what does advanced manufacturing mean, and in each business industry and with each business partner, what does it look like in their pathway, and what does it look like with them? So that is what tonight is about. And what we want to do next semester is actually bring some of our partners in so that we could have kind of like a career fair, but it is bringing to life for students what they don't know that they don't know.
Exactly. And for their parents, right? It's also,
Sure.
parents don't know what they don't know. Mark, I wanted to turn back over to you for a minute. You know, you mentioned something earlier on, and we have been focused primarily on those coming out of high school, but we have a lot of adults who were displaced as a result of the pandemic. Not only did they lose their jobs, but you know, the organizations that they worked for don't even exist anymore. So can you talk about a little, you know, one way is through high schools, but how do you go about, and maybe it's the workforce boards, but how do you go about finding and reaching out to those adults that might be great candidates for jobs at the hospital?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I think this is another area that for a long time, traditionally organizations have ignored is this workforce that for some reason wanted to pursue a career in engineering or a career in nursing, and just were not able to do it because they had to stop and take care of their family. At some point, they had something come up in their lives that prevented them from going and achieving the goals that they need. That's a group that we can't forget about. And from that standpoint, we looked first internally at all those individuals within our industry. And we had the ability to use our technology to do that, to find out the individuals that had some sort of education, but never completed it. They might have completed one semester. They might have completed 2 years and then had to drop out. That's where we first started. And then based on this group, we contacted them and proposed a way that they could upscale into certain career paths and how we could do that for them. So that was our first initiative.
And Mark, let me back. How do you find those folks?
Yeah. Well, like I think I explained earlier, internally we have the database to be able to tell us these individuals of how much education they had based off their resume, based off their application process. We were able to do this, and we were able to have our leaders through their performance system make sure that they were having career conversations and identifying these individuals. I think again, once we tapped into that market and we reached our max, the next brainstorming session was, how do we take this outside our doors into industry? And that's where we reached out to our partnership with the workforce boards in multiple pieces of our market that helped us identify individuals that came in to their buildings that just lost their jobs, that because of COVID that their business is closed, and they need to find that next opportunity. And that's where we tapped into. I think the best story I have is I have a young individual, probably in her 20s, that went back and became an apprentice for us, is now a certified medical assistant. And then by word of mouth, she reached out, and her mother, who moved to this country probably 15, 20 years ago, never had a job in the United States. And we got her into apprenticeship. And both of them are working at one of our clinics, the exact same clinic. Because of the process that we gave them an opportunity to earn and learn and to gain this critical skill. The younger daughter now is moving into nursing school, and the mother is continuing to be employed within our organization. So that's the type of opportunity that we want to make sure that we're targeting individuals that are trying to find better opportunities for them in terms of career growth, earning income, but also looking for some stability. And I think healthcare certainly has that right now, as we continue to need more and more workers as the market expands.
No, and the population you're focused on is, really important. We have over 40 million individuals across the country with some college, no credential, and 4 million, Absolutely. A little over 4 million of those are here in Texas. So we have our big fair share of those. But what we've seen in some of the outreach that we've done at Trellis is that for that population, there are barriers. There are childcare issues, transportation issues, all of those types of things. And I'm just wondering whether or not, as an organization, you are building in some of those support pieces. I know Annette's got a bunch of students that are graduating and can run a daycare center for you, but just curious, how you're helping with that population and those barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also when you look at those numbers, probably a large majority of those are multicultural, low income, diverse families. What we're starting to see as we remove those barriers is we're starting to see a higher usage of our benefits by those individuals than individuals that are particularly a Caucasian white within our industry. So some of the things we have to eliminate, I think two we addressed earlier. One is the cost of education. So particularly at Baylor Scott and White, we've eliminated that cost of education either through a funding opportunity, a grant opportunity, or partnership, or through our tuition assistance program, where again we will pay for that cost up front as they enroll in the school. So that's the first and foremost. That's eliminate those barriers of cost. Second one is what we find is the biggest challenge is I can't get to the brick and mortar school. It's too far. I don't have a car. I can't drive. It's in the evenings. I'd have to give up my other job, and I can't do that right now because I got to take care of my family. In order for us to do that, that's where we started looking as much as we could at a virtual model. How much of this training can be done virtually? Can it be done in their living rooms? Can it be done in a library? Can they come into one of our locations that might be closer to their home and use our computers to be able to take these training modules? So that's the second piece that we wanted to eliminate. And then third, we are trying to do as much upfront in identifying where these individuals live and targeting those locations to bring them into our organizations. We know, and the data tells us, particularly in a high growth market as Austin, employees don't have to travel more than 15 miles to find that next job. So we're trying to identify partnerships within that donut to bring them into our organization. So as long as we can keep the training, the financial costs down, and the transportation within a certain area, we're seeing a very high success rate and return on investment in those areas. Once Annette moves her school closer to our locations, we'll start hiring a lot more of her her students. But I think that's the biggest one, particularly in the Austin market. And I think a lot of other people in big cities will see transportation, particularly when you don't have high public transportation, makes it very difficult to get those individuals into your facilities.
And that really is true. We've actually had some students who, upon completion of their internships, were offered full-time
Yeah.
jobs, and couldn't take them because of transportation issues as young adults.
Absolutely. Yeah, during that internship, we would provide gift cards for Uber, lifts, and public transportation. But yeah, once you get to that job offer, then as Annette said, we see that as probably one of the number one reasons of why they decline the offer is just they don't have the ability to make that commute, or they can find something closer to their home that may be easier for them to be there on time and to complete the goals that they need.
Yeah, no, that's great. Annette, I wonder, as I listen to Mark talk, as you're bringing families in for this discussion, do you ever have parents who say, gosh, I wish this was here when I was young, or is there any way that I can get into one of these programs? Does that come up at all, Annette?
It does. It comes up very frequently. Parents see the opportunities that their kids have. It is more from the perspective of, I'm so glad that my son or daughter has this opportunity.
Yeah.
But some of what we are able to capture is what we're able to help support. So we may be able to bring some of the individuals into our district as paraprofessionals. We might be able to bring them into our district for landscaping or maintenance and operations, or part of our construction and planning departments, our transportation departments. So it certainly isn't an internship, and it's not for those advanced opportunities. But for entry level, sometimes that is something that even our families who are new to the country just don't have access to. So that's a welcome opportunity for them.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. So both of you, just listening to you talk, you have a lot of experience, and some of it is trial and error and trying to figure out what works. I'm going to ask you this broader question around, in this whole ecosystem, as we're moving, and I like this earn and learn as opposed to learn and earn. So this earn and learn, approach. What are the most promising opportunities? And are there places, do you see places as you've gone through this path of developing these programs where things could be strengthened? Or are there lessons learned if someone else wanted to start down this path? What would be your pieces of advice to them?
From a K-12 perspective, it's about finding partnerships that will give students authentic apprenticeship or internship opportunities, so that we can, and what I would recommend for other school districts is make sure that your curriculum is aligned with business partners, and that you sit down and listen to what the business and industry partners are looking for in kids. Because if you don't, you're preparing students for failure. They may walk into an internship and wind up serving coffee if you're not really paying attention to the skills that they need. We do listen to what is of need in the area, of course, manufacturing and engineering, mobility. There are high areas of focus for hiring. However, what we really look at is trying to, like you said earlier, attach to the student where their interest lies, so that they can find out all the opportunities there are in welding, all the opportunities there are in construction and planning, and get them interested in what they're interested in, and then show them what the opportunities are from there.
But did you have to do, so when you came in, was it a major sort of mindset shift that had to take place, or had someone else done that before you around, the traditional way? So I guess I'm talking about a cultural shift in terms of what is the role of, high school?
I think the cultural shift that happened was that we had a beautiful facility. I'm always being asked to take people on tours of our facility. Every one of our labs truly looks like a courtroom, an emergency room, a neonatal unit. Every one of our labs really looks like that industry. However, we had this beautiful building and nothing authentic was happening.
Hmm.
So it was the change in culture and mindset of, so what are the outcomes that we want for the kids? And how do we change what we're doing here to get authentic outcomes? It could look real pretty, but if it's not authentic and we're really not preparing students for a true job, or we're not preparing them with the correct skills, or we're not aligning or getting business partners at the table. We had 211 students graduate with internships last year. However, that had not been the trend. So when you're talking about the cultural change, I think it really was making purposeful decisions with what we were offering rather than how it looked.
Yeah, and you have real metrics in terms of whether it's internships or increased graduation rate or even persistence and all of that, as demonstrated through the fact that there are high school students who are now seeing a value in their education beyond just getting a grade.
And we keep in touch with our business partners after they graduate. We want to see how many stayed.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So same question to you, Mark. What lessons have you learned, or what would you share?
Well, I think it's important. I mean, we all realize on this call we're not getting younger, and we need more healthcare, particularly as the demands get higher. I think for us and our partners, and we've had some tremendous partners in the greater Austin region. Certainly, Annette and the schools have come to the table with solutions on how we help with that supply and demand issue that we have. But with those partnerships, what we're looking for relative criterias in terms of, are they adaptable? Are they in demand criteria that we need right now within our organization? COVID has changed so much in terms of how we provide care. The reimbursement systems within healthcare are changing the way that we deliver the care in each one of our facilities. So while allowing the student that ability to have new levels of flexibility in their curriculum, one example may be they go to school 3 days a week and they're in our facility 2 days a week. So we're able to create that flexibility both in the school classroom and the time that they're there, and the ability that they can come into actually our organization and cover some maybe of our high demand needs that we have going on. So I think that for us is key as we create partnerships, is flexibility, relevancy. Are they targeting high demand positions that we need today? I can't wait 4 years for a curriculum to change or this program to be adapted. I need the individual now, and how quickly can we get them into our organization? And I think, as I stated earlier, our educational partners sat down with us and said, how can we make that adoption to changing that 18-month schedule, that let's get it down to 10 weeks or 12 weeks? How can we convert from a brick and mortar setting to a virtual setting? But we do have to monitor this also for quality of care. Are the outcomes still at the same level that we expect them to be? We're not sacrificing quality for speed or higher demand or higher supply of students into our organization. So I think all those things are extremely important, but it does take a partnership to work together and to eliminate those barriers and be flexible and adaptable in terms of what each partner needs.
So, Mark, had there not been a pandemic and a shortage of healthcare, do you think your hospital would have still gone down this road, or is it driven by this real shortage of skilled staff?
It's two ways. I think early on we adopted apprenticeships prior to COVID. What COVID accelerated for us is that ability to be flexible in terms of offering virtual. We really sat down and said, how can we, and for a long period of time, we couldn't bring students into our organization during COVID. They just could not come into our organization. So we felt we were losing some important skills that they were gaining by not being able to bring them in. And that's when we turned to that virtual model to be able to continue that path that we had and the momentum we had. And what we found out coming out of it is now that we have more people that would prefer to do the virtual learning than actually the classroom setting, to go into that brick and mortar classroom setting. So that has really changed the way that we've looked at tapping into talent and bringing it into our organization.
And do you think it would be fair to say, or let me ask you a different way? So, traditionally, you put a job posting out there, you review a whole bunch of resumes, they come in, or the high HR interviews them, et cetera, et cetera. You bring them on board, you spend a period of time training them, and there's a cost associated with that.
Absolutely.
Would you say that partnering with, an ISD or a high school that's already got a program in place that is developing that pipeline of talent for you, would you say that the cost is equivalent? There's some upfront cost to get it up and running, or that one has a higher sort of success rate, if you will?
I think there's a couple ways to look at it. I think from the model that Annette and I have been talking about, the internships for us give us an opportunity to test drive before we buy.
With no strings attached, right?
No strings attached. And I think that's important. Turnover is costly. The lack of productivity, the gaps that we have, particularly in healthcare, the cost of renting is so much more expensive than owning. And that's what we're finding out, particularly in big markets right now. But it does give us this opportunity to test drive, obviously. And most importantly, it's as Annette said, once you make the offer, will they make that 20-minute commute? Or are they going to make that decision after about 2 weeks to say, you know what, I just can't do this any longer? So I think that's where the internships, that exposure as much as we can to get them actually into the work site that we think they're going to be in, and where they can work and where they can call their place of employment is very, very important up front, to match our culture, which I think is extremely important, that they fit into that culture. They're then engaged. They know that we're going to invest in them as employees. They start seeing career pathways and what the models look like to pursue career pathways as this organization. They know they don't have to leave our organization to pursue another degree or to earn more money, to support their family as costs get more and more expensive. So yes, there is a tremendous upside for us to be able to start developing these individuals at a high school level. Now, I do want to be cautious. If you have an organization of all 18-year-olds, that's a very difficult organization to run.
Yeah.
And it also eliminates some of that experience. And we need to make sure we have a balanced blend of talent within our organization. So we do have that pipeline coming in behind those that are retiring, but we also have that talent that's able to teach, and transition of knowledge and skill is so extremely important that we can't lose sight of that as we balance out our workforce.
No, that's great. I'm trying to think of selling points to convince others to participate in programs like this, either with high schools or with community colleges, et cetera, to take that jump and to do this work. It sounds like you would be a good reference point for them.
I would love to. Obviously, areas that we're looking at on a daily basis of how do we infuse talent and eliminate the barriers for them to come into our organization and to remain with us and to take care of all those that we love and support and be part of a quality organization and also an industry that is just going to continue to grow as those of us on this call get older and need the medical
That's right. That's right. I agree.
Right.
I have some more questions, but I also wanted to take an opportunity to open it up to our audience. We have 39 people out there participating, and if anyone has any questions, Andrea, I don't know if you've gotten any in so far.
Yes, one question we have is, I guess for both of you, it wasn't really pointed at either one of you. are there any 2-generation programs? Dr. Tielle, you sort of mentioned that families are interested or wish they would have had the educational experiences that Del Valle affords students now. But the question was, are there any 2-generation programs at either one of your organizations?
The only thing that we offer GED programs, and we offer English as a second language programs where we do the training and the teaching for GED. We do the training and the teaching to learn English, and they would get a certification for passing the English as a second language. And then in terms of actually hiring, they are job specific to the district.
Yeah, as an industry, we actually in our catalog of programs, we also offer GED. We pay for that for an individual, and we also pay for second language, the same thing. So we know those are critical skills that we're going to need to meet our customers.
Thank you. Another question we have is for you, Mark. Could also be for both of you, I suppose. Has telehealth changed healthcare job opportunities to include more remote work?
Yes and no. I think from a standpoint, telehealth has provided us the opportunity to control the demand within our organization. So for a lot of those individuals that have to go to the emergency room, and can create a backlog of individuals in our hospitals. Telehealth has given us the ability to take care of some of those minor illnesses early on. Now, what that skill set brings is the ability to communicate, and that's an important piece that we look for in a lot of those telehealth roles. Is that functionality to communicate with the patient. You got to be a little more direct and exact in terms of what you're sharing with those individuals. But really, from a telehealth standpoint, it has helped us in terms of our demand of taking care of individuals that potentially shouldn't be coming to an emergency room or a physician's office. Which is backlogging the demand on individuals and creating burnout. So we've tried to use telehealth to eliminate that burnout, and it has been a benefit to us within the healthcare industry.
Thanks. Andrea, any others?
Not at this time, just those right now.
So I'm going to switch to a little bit of a different but related topic, Annette, that I'm hoping you can speak to. I was just in DC last week and heard a presentation about this real issue with boys and men and completing their education and actually going on furthering, that there's been this huge decrease. Girls and women are advancing and moving on, and they make up the biggest portion of those that are going on to college now. But there's this real concern about this drop off. And I'm just wondering, with your experience with what you're seeing and what you're doing at Del Valle, if that is changing the numbers there for you, and is that something that you're watching?
It isn't changing the numbers yet, I will say that. But again, I think it's a different demographic. And because we're not just focusing on 4-year degrees and advancement, and we have a balance of career and technical education programs that interest both boys and girls, we aren't seeing that at this point. However, we do have a big push for engineering and girls, and STEM and STEAM and girls, and trying to influence and get more and more of our girls into the manufacturing and engineering pathways. So we see an increase in girls, but I have not yet seen a decrease in the boys. Not to say that I don't see that in my peer districts, just personally in Del Valle, I do know my peers are experiencing that in other districts.
Yeah, and I think it's a real concern going forward. So I was just curious whether or not specifically because of the programs you have in place. And I know there's been this big push, and there are tons of programs out there for girls to get into STEM fields and other. And luckily, they are grabbing those opportunities and running with them. But it's leaving some boys off, on the side a little bit. So I'm hoping programs like what you're doing will create, let them see that there's an opportunity for them as well.
Yeah, I think also, from an industry standpoint, you got to remember, I'm in an industry right now in healthcare that about 85% of the workforce is female.
Yeah.
And so there's been a cultural change in that industry over probably the last 10, 15 years of seeing more boys, males entering into that industry to become nurses. So as it's changing of more females, girls moving into an engineering side. And I have one myself, that female that has become an engineer, my daughter. But now you're seeing more males jumping into the healthcare space and finding out it is a great career to move into. It pays very well to move into it. It actually has a lot of flexibility within it, as most of our shifts can be 3 12-hour days. So now you have additional time to do things and be around your family. So it comes back to what I think Annette and I talked about earlier, is we got to start very young educating individuals about these career pathways and eliminating the stigmas that come along with them, but that you can make a very good living in healthcare, which has traditionally been female, or in engineering, which has traditionally been male. And I think we're starting to see that change quite a bit right now in both of our industries.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, not funny, but there are a number of nurses I've met recently who are male, and they are traveling nurses, and they love it. They're young, and what it affords them is to,
Absolutely.
live for 3 to 6 months in Texas in the winter and 3 to 6 months in Maine in the summer, or whatever it might be. And they are loving the lifestyle until they settle down and have children, right?
Absolutely. I think if somebody would have offered that to me in high school and said, we will pay you, again, these individuals that are traveling are making over $100 an hour, and we will pay for you to travel the country. That's probably something we'd have a lot of people signing up for.
Yeah.
To be able to do that.
Does that mean pay for their housing as well?
In some cases, they absolutely do, particularly in rural areas where it's very difficult to find staff. They will pay for their housing or give them a subsidy to pay for that housing. Absolutely.
I see something new Annette's going to promote tonight in her program.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. But that's not only nurses. I mean, I want to highlight that there's a lot of radiology laboratory. I mean, there's just such a shortage in a lot of rural areas within the United States that are looking for individuals to come there and to cover during that time frame. So yes, it is a tremendous opportunity to see the country, and not only the country, but you could also go international and almost do the same thing.
These are the things that you're right. I wish they were around when I was younger.
Right.
I don't know that it would have changed, because I can't even look when they take my blood. But
Right.
but to our earlier conversation about what is advanced manufacturing and what do we not know? I mean, AI's been around, but Chat GPT just came, is now like taking off. And if you had talked to somebody, Annette, I'm sure 2 or 3 years ago, nobody would have been thinking or training for that, right? It's just the world is changing so quickly.
So I was just talking with the teacher this morning, and she was asking if she could require her kids to handwrite everything, because the kids are now using these bots to write their papers, and they can tell, the teachers can tell that this is not you as a teacher, a former teacher, your students' writing. So you can tell when it's not their writing. You also know their vocabulary ability. And then they have the counter programs that can tell if a student is plagiarizing. And then the kids have a counter program. So just in terms of that, that's a challenge that didn't expect to have 4 years ago. And certainly, like I was talking earlier about computer science and digital twins, never heard of it, didn't know what it was. And then a company approached me and was showing me how the idea behind a digital twin is you replicate a building, and for safety and security purposes, you can have police train inside the building to determine what to do in an intruder situation. You can have a robot in there and mimic what would happen in different situations. So that's something that they're going to be bringing to our kids. And that's what I was saying. We don't know what jobs we're preparing kids for. And when I went into that meeting and he was talking about digital twins, I had no idea what we were talking about. And
Right.
they made up my own verbs about it.
Right.
That is a challenge, and keeping up with how quickly technology is changing is a challenge.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that also impacts the healthcare world as well, Mark, in terms of how things are managed.
Yeah, I agree. You know, the biggest thing that we've seen change is typically what a clinician has spent 90% of her time taking care of a patient to 50% of that now is charting, and I think, you know, AI could be an advantage to us from that standpoint, is making sure we have that individual back on the bedside taking care of the patient. But you know, in healthcare, there are a lot of things you can't remove because of AI, but we have started experimenting with technology to be able to look at how we can supplement the shortage we have in terms of we have robots right now in many of our facilities that will go into a patient's room and help them understand their needs and what they do need if we don't have anybody available. Interesting.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I already see, I know, Annette, you said earlier that, you know, you couldn't imagine 8 careers, but I can see somebody either going into nursing and ending up, you know, doing AI or vice versa, you know, it all, and then from that to something else. So, you know,
Absolutely.
anything's possible. Yeah. I wanted to circle back to Andrea to see if we have any more questions that have come in.
Yes, one more question for Mark. So this is actually for me. There was a clinical rotation program when I was in high school in Central Texas, actually Killeen, and it allowed high school students who were sophomores through seniors to rotate through different departments in a hospital. And you would go, I think every Friday, I think it was just one day a week, you would go to 2 different hospitals and you would spend 1 or 2 Fridays. It was very, very real task, to be honest, but it was shadowing a nurse, shadowing a radiologist, and doing something, whether it was holding something, moving something, filling a cart, something that didn't need a certification or harming a patient. But it opened my eyes to how many opportunities there are to work in healthcare. So I wondered, are those types of programs in existence anymore? Or that help decrease obstacles to getting people into healthcare if they know more about the jobs that exist?
Sure. They do exist. I think they exist not as frequently. They're real well intended and laid out. But I think there's some complexities behind that, and again, we got to eliminate them. One is obviously privacy, and that's an important piece of making sure that we protect each patient's privacy and the individuals, the students that are floating around in our hospitals. We got to be very careful of to protect that in the community. But what we've been doing in some of the key pieces is partnering with school systems to set up academies where we can bring them into our organization, particularly in the summer, and spend time rotating among a lot of our different departments. We just completed, I think, about 4 this year across the state of Texas, where we brought in over 100 students and exposed them through, I think it's a 12-week program where they would come half a day and spend it in our facility. It used to be called maybe junior volunteers. But now it's structured. We don't have a lot of students wanting to volunteer, but they do, as a formal program, have the ability to come in spend some time and shadow individuals, particularly in clinical areas. We've had some individuals go into our surgery suites during the summertime and just see what that looks like. But again, it takes a lot of resources. You have to make sure that you have enough staff to be able to shadow and take the responsibility for that learning environment. We feel it is extremely important to do that. And we hope the next step of that is actually these individuals, as I talked about earlier, gives us an opportunity to screen them ahead of time. If they are successful in the summer with us, we see them showing up for work every day. We see how they interact with staff. We see that they're willing to learn and take on assignments. Then we will sit there and try to re-recruit them back into our organization and talk about a career pathway. We will talk about, have you thought about going into healthcare? Have you looked at actually supply chain management maybe as a healthcare career? When they come back and say, well, I don't like blood, just like Debra said, well, we got a job for you. It doesn't have to be taking blood from somebody. So yes, I think you're seeing not as many out there as you might have seen before because of the lack of staff and individuals that have the freedom to spend time and mentor and give the student the exposure that they need. But it is something that is extremely critical to get individuals educated and in the work that's available for them within healthcare.
That makes sense. And pointing out things like the non-patient facing jobs is so important because they're
Absolutely, they are critical.
So I'm going to ask one last question to both Mark and Annette before we close out. And that is there anything more you'd like to share that I didn't ask you about that you were hoping to talk about today? And I'll start with Annette.
I just think that it is so important as we move forward and we think about how to be innovative as educators, the partnerships with the higher education, whether it's a two-year degree at a community college or a 4-year advanced degree at a 4-year college or university, and then triangulating that with a business and industry partner. I think that is going to do so much for the workforce. I think it's going to prepare students better than any of us were ever prepared for our careers when we graduated from high school, and really is the future. I think it's also important for us to utilize technology and the distance learning, because I think that opens up a whole array of issues that kind of break that transportation barrier when it's applicable. So just really thinking about that triangulation of business partner, higher ed, and school district K-12.
That's great. Thank you, Annette. And Mark?
Yeah, I'll follow up and ask that this can't be a solution by just industry alone. It's got to be a partnership that's a collaborative effort. And in doing that, I think if we can work together to eliminate a lot of the barriers that we identified today, we're going to see this robust pipeline of talent coming into all of our industries and our organizations. I think the work that Annette's doing, the work that we're looking at in apprenticeship models, these are all things that create new pathways for individuals that may not have had the opportunity. It's also an opportunity to take a look at how we can simplify things. They don't have to be complex. And many years ago, I was in the manufacturing sector, and we were looking at how do we get more minorities and females into engineering careers. We simplified it as much as baking a cake, and if we can create where it's an interesting and an easy, comprehensible piece to explain to students that they're going to enter into these career pathways. If you think about baking a cake, you're taking a solid and you're taking a liquid and you're heating it up at a temperature. Manufacturing is no different. Building an aircraft, making a stool. What you're doing is you're taking liquids and solids and you're heating them up. If we can create that interest in students at a very young age, or an individual that may want to come back into the workplace and make it a simple explanation that they can be successful at and they can grow in their career, then I think we have done a tremendous job of increasing the talent in our labor force.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The partnership is key to the success of all of this. So with that, I just want to thank Annette, who's got some evening events going on. Mark, who is incredible. You're both incredibly busy people, and want to thank you both for making time to talk with us and our audience today. I really appreciated your comments and your insights. I've learned something new, which I always take away from this. And thank you for going with the flow with my questions. You took me there with your comments. So thank you both very much. I really appreciate it. And to everybody who tuned in, thank you very much. Our next one is being held on December 14th. Andrea, I'm sure we'll be posting and sharing information about that. But again, thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.